you everybody for joining today's webinar, Developmental Approaches to Peer Advocacy for College Success. This is the first in a series of 2 webinars. On behalf of Campus Compact and the Community College National Center for Community Engagement, and specifically Livier Khan, I want to thank you all for making the time to join this webinar. This is Shauna Berger. I am the C2C Project Manager at Campus Compact. By way of introduction to the webinar, I wanted to share with you how this webinar fits into the C2C work and why I have reached out to our 2 presenters, Mandy Savitz-Romer and Suzanne Bouffard. Their recently published book, Ready, Willing, and Able, A Developmental Approach to College Access and Success, has been highly praised by experts in the field. By the way, information and a review of the book are posted on the C2C online resource book. In particular, I wanted to bring their expertise to our C2C work because they, unlike any other college success experts, integrate a youth development framework with college success practices. This means that while they see value in the more traditional instrumental approach to college success initiatives that focus on providing information, academic preparation, and financial support, they see the need to also address the role that social, emotional, and cognitive development play in influencing students' college experience and whether they stay or leave. Mandy and Suzanne are exactly the people I was looking for to help us think about the ways that peer advocates can be trained to work holistically with C2C students, so that peer advocates are doing much more than sharing information. These webinars will help you to approach this work from a developmental perspective and/or name and validate work you are already doing in this way. The accompanying lessons will offer some concrete ways to incorporate this developmental framework into the training of your peer advocates. The 2 webinars in this series will draw on research on peer processes as well as research on social and emotional skills and how those skills connect to college completion. Webinar number 1 will focus on identity and self-concept. Topics that will be explored include reflecting on and developing self-efficacy in a college-staying identity. Webinar number 2 will focus on motivation and self-regulation. Topics that will be explored include developing positive motivational beliefs, modeling and developing organization and self-regulation skills, and leveraging resources for ongoing support. Now I'd like to introduce Mandy Savitz-Romer and share a bit of background information so you all know where she's coming from. Mandy Savitz-Romer is the director of the Harvard Graduate School of Education's Master's Program in Prevention Science and Practice. Mandy's professional experience has allowed her to link research to practice in the field of school counseling, specifically as it relates to college access and retention for urban students. Before joining the Harvard Graduate School of Education, Mandy was the Associate Director of the Boston Higher Education Partnership, where she led research policy and programmatic initiatives focused on promoting college access, readiness, and support for Boston Public School students. So I'm going to hand it over to Mandy.
Thank you, Shauna, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. So glad you could be with us. And I want to thank Campus Compact both for reaching out, but also for your interest in using a developmental approach to support the training of your peer advocates. Together with Suzanne Bouffard, I'm very excited to be here. And Suzanne, who is my partner in crime, is a researcher here at HGSE as well as a writer, and brings her expertise in developmental psychology to this work. And I think that what you'll find is we are drawing links between what you know about supporting student success in college with what we know about psychology and development in general. Today, you'll mostly hear from me as I speak about identity and self-concept. And as Shauna explained, next webinar will focus more on self-regulation and motivation. But these developmental processes all fit together, and we present them separately, mostly just to break down the information. As you can see here, I've set some objectives for today's presentation. Specifically, I intend to draw links between what we know about students' development and what we know about how those things shape persistence in college. And using that, I hope that by the end of today's lesson, you can begin to think about how you structure PA training modules and settings, and you create the kinds of peer support that will target identity and self-concept. To organize our time, I'd like to begin with an overview of the developmental framework and why we use it, and end this session with clear ideas to incorporate into your peer advocates training and coursework. I intend to leave us plenty of time for Q&A when we will be joined by Suzanne Bouffard and give you a chance to ask whatever questions you have. However, if you have clarifying questions or things that will enhance your learning, certainly raise them by sending something in the chat window to Shauna, and we'll do our best to respond promptly. So using a developmental approach. All of you know, as you are engaged in the work of student success, that there are plenty of resources and guides out there that point to the specific practices that promote persistence and retention in college. Certainly we know that academic success and coming to college with the academic skills to be successful matters a whole lot. We also know that first-year students need support and information about how to be successful on campus and other kinds of supports that help engage students with an institution. And while these supports are indeed important, there's been an overemphasis on these informational and instrumental supports with very little attention to students' developmental needs. Informational supports like advising and sharing information about transfer policies, etc., are important, as are instrumental supports like tutoring. However, missing out on what what college students bring to campus with them and how ready they are to take advantage of these supports means that we're not able to provide supports that differentiate what students are ready to hear and what they're able to act on. Using a developmental approach means that we pay attention to these developmental processes. We pay attention to whether or not they embody a college-staying identity, whether or not they believe it's actually likely that they're going to finish college and earn a certificate or a degree. And many people can use this approach, faculty, administrators, we've trained teachers, we've trained student affairs staff. But one group that has not received as much attention, and you'll know this, are the peers. Peers are especially influential when it comes to supporting students' college-staying identity. They're influential to students' development in general, but in particular to the ideas and the processes that we'll talk about today. So developmental approach means paying attention to the everyday behaviors and conversations that your peer advocates have with the C2C students, as well as more structured lessons and guides for interaction. And we'll talk a little bit about both of those. So first, the role of identity. In the K-12 literature, there's growing attention to the importance of a college-going identity. Largely, this is about aspirations. It's believed, of course, that if students aspire to go to college, if they have a college-going identity, then the behaviors that are necessary to achieve that goal will follow. They'll take the right courses, they'll do their academic coursework, but that if they don't have that identity, then they're going to struggle to engage academically as well as socially. So we assume that when students arrive on campus, they're completely bought into the idea of being there and that they believe in their capacity to achieve the degree that they set out to earn. But that's not true. Some college students continue to question whether or not they belong. I'm sure you've heard this from students. And they question the likelihood that they'll actually earn a degree. As they transition into this new role, it's important for college students to internalize this new part of their identity. Here, I'm referring to a college-staying identity. Having a college-staying identity means that they have connected their role as a college student with the other aspects of their identity, other important pieces of who they are. Having this college-going identity means that they're going to take risks and engage in the kinds of behaviors that are necessary for them to achieve that goal. But owning an identity means acting on it. Having aspirations alone doesn't mean that one is going to reach their college degree goal or earn the certificate they set out to achieve. For example, I may have aspirations of running a marathon one day, but I'm not actually sure it will happen. In fact, even when I run a short distance, I don't necessarily feel like a runner. I feel like I can do it because it's short or it's easy. I may not have adopted a runner's identity. If I feel like a runner or that I can actually run a marathon, I'm more likely to try a longer run or a hillier run. I might take a longer route. Also, if I feel I can do it, I might be more likely to sacrifice sleep or time with my family. But the truth is, if I don't really internalize this identity, it's going to shape my engagement with it. In short, using my running analogy, embodying a college-staying identity translates to everyday behaviors like studying and attending classes, spending time with other college students, making appointments with faculty members, going to the Writing Center. And that's why identity matters. But many people continue to ask me, why should we pay attention to identity? That's not part of what I do. The short answer is because identity is foundational to other developmental processes. And as you'll hear from Suzanne during the next webinar session, it's foundational to self-regulation and the ability to motivate to achieve a college goal. So that we see this as foundational and that it creates a process for engaging with their academics and with the institution. But more importantly, one of the reasons why people don't think about identity development in higher education is because it's assumed that identity development is something that happens in adolescence. But the truth is it continues to occur in college. It's true that for the 18-year-old who's now in a new context and is trying to figure out what this new identity means, they're doing so in the context of other aspects of their identity. And it's true for the 35-year-old who returns to campus and now needs to integrate this new identity of being a college student into other fully formed aspects of his or her identity, like having a job, being a parent, being a caretaker of an older parent, that these new aspects of their identity all need to fit together in order for them to embody a college-staying identity. In other words, your students are, while C2C is going on, still in a process of identity development. So if we know that it's happening and that supporting it will likely enhance the existing academic, informational, and instrumental supports that you are already doing, attending to it becomes vitally important. Before moving on, I just ask you to take a moment and think about your identity. Think about what aspects of your identity come to mind. When you ask people to talk about or define their identity, most will reference their gender or their race, maybe even their religion or cultural affiliation. But identity is made up of much more than that. One organizing framework for thinking about identity is to think of three areas: demographics, that which we're born with or born into, the roles one fills, or their self-concept, what we believe about ourselves. All of these things make up our identity. And over time, we add new things to it. But oftentimes, as we add new things, we have to think about whether or not it fits with what's already in place. And that's true for college-staying identity. How does being a college student fit with these other dimensions of identity, with my belief in what's possible, with what I believe to be true about myself based on my demographics? And how do we help students create a congruence across these different dimensions? When students walk onto a college campus, they're not necessarily going to assume that college-staying identity. They're going to need to work at it. And our role is helping them construct this new identity and making sure that things fit together. So how does understanding identity help us understand our student behavior and help us with student engagement in college? Our goal is to help students integrate their current self as a college student into existing parts of their identity. As you can see then, that going back to the running example, if I believe that women can't be runners, it will be difficult for me to adopt or integrate that into my identity. Or if my self-concept consists of low levels of self-efficacy, something I'll talk about in a minute, if I think I'm not very good at running, it's unlikely that I'll take steps to become a runner. I probably won't even try. So understanding how students make sense of their identity and what they believe to be true about their ability is very much going to go into whether or not and how they form a college-going identity. So perceptions that shape action. How do we think about helping students persist in college or even in a particular class? It might mean helping them adopt this new part of their identity. But doing that depends on bringing some aspects of their identity into awareness. It means, in fact, making some things that might be invisible more visible. Some parts of our identity are not always in our awareness, nor is the process by which we develop them. It's not always clear to ourselves how I became somebody who's good at something, or more importantly, how I began to believe that I was good at something. You can see here by the questions that I've posed, doing that means beginning with exploring not just your identity, but how we make meaning of it. This is because the narrative that people create about their identity shapes their everyday beliefs, and more importantly, their actions and